Let's take it from the top down. Hi, I'm Connie Ellison. Today we're going to create 2 sweaters that are work from the top down. First, we'll knit a comfy tunic-length sweater with a saucy split opening at the neckline. It has 2 handy pockets and a soft, easy fit. Then, crochet a lacy but casual long-sleeve pullover without seaming. It's great to wear with leggings or to dress up jeans. And in the technique corner, get tips on knitting mitered squares. It's all here today on Knit and Crochet Now.
From the editors of Crochet World, Creative Knitting and Crochet Magazine, it's Knit and Crochet Now, presenting new designs and stitching techniques featuring Connie Ellison, Lena Skvagerson, Melissa Leapman, Ellen Gormley. Stay tuned for knitting, crocheting, yarns, needles, and more. Today's project theme is top-down sweaters.
I'm here today hanging out with my top-down sweater. Right, I'm calling it my sweater because the name of it is actually Lena's top-down sweater. So this is a favorite sweater to me. It's a great knit. You knit it from the top down, which means that you can adjust your sleeve length, you can adjust the body length, and it has some really cool features here. You work the yoke that's just knit and purl stitches, so even if this would be your first sweater, you will be able to make it with the tips I'll share with you here today. So let me just tell you where we're gonna start today. We're gonna start casting on up here around the neck opening. And then there's going to be increases going on the yoke section, and I'm going to start showing you how we do the increases. So I have prepared a little piece here where I already knit 3 rows because that's what the pattern tells us to do. And then when we come to an increase row, what we do is that we follow the pattern it's going to tell us to make yarn overs. So here now I'm going to knit the first 4 stitches because those 4 stitches along the front edge, we're never going to make any increases in those 4 stitches because that's like the band. But here we go, we're going to make the first increase, yarn over. Just wrap the yarn around the needle, easy as that. Knit a couple of more stitches, however many the pattern will tell you. Do another yarn over, keep knitting, and that's how we increase stitches on the yoke to make it grow into the body piece. And then I'm doing another yarn over here just to show you, because I'm going to show you next what we do on the next row when we get to those yarn overs, because we do not want to have a lot of holes in this pattern. So we're going to close up the yarn overs, and that can be tricky if you don't know how. But see here you have the yarn over. The first one we want to close up. So if I would knit it into the front, you see how that would become a hole. So I actually go into the back loop. Go into the back and knit it. And you can see now how by twisting it, it kind of closed the hole together. So we need to know how to knit into the back loop of it. But the pattern also, all through, is going to ask you to purl through the back loop. And here we are at the next yarn over. So purling, we're not purling into the front, but into the back. And if we twist around a little bit, you can see how I go from the back into the loop. Put the yarn around the needle and pull through. The yarn over is twisted and it's not going to be a hole. And then we'll keep working till the next yarn over, and then we'll knit or purl it into the back loop, whatever the pattern tells you. So I'm going to do another purl in the back because that might be the trickiest one. Purl into the back like that and keep going. So now we know how to do the increasing. And I'm going to lay down here and show you what it looks like. And as you can see, those increases do not create any holes in the fabric. So now we can continue on the yoke. And I am prepared to show you what happens next. I have mocked up a little pretend yoke. So let's put it like this, where you can see how we have the split. We have started, until the split ends, we have worked rows back and forth, okay? And now we have started to work in the round to close up the end of the split. We're coming to the point of the yoke where it's time to divide for the armholes. So we are actually here at the sweater, and I'm going to show you how we do this step. So here I have my little pretend yoke, and what's happening next is that we want to move the front stitches over to this needle, and we're just going to slip them over like this, as many stitches as the pattern will tell you to slip. We're just slipping all the stitches on the front edge, like this, so that from here on, the new beginning of the round will be underneath your right armhole. So you get to here. What we're doing next is that we take a stitch holder. We're slipping all the sleeve stitches over on a stitch holder like this. As many stitches the pattern tells you, you're going to slip onto your holder, and those are going to be worked later on when you work the sleeves after the body is done. So let's pretend now that that's how many stitches the pattern will tell you to slip on a holder. So I'm going to grab a new strand of the yarn. We can just do a slip knot. There are many ways we can cast on new stitches. I prefer to just do a slip knot, and that's going to be the first stitch. We're going to do 7 more. I do the backward loop method here. So just twisting the yarn like this, picking it up with your needle. So we have 3 new stitches, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's my underarm stitches, like this. Then I'll just keep knitting across the back till I get to the next armhole. So when I get to the next armhole in the other side, let's see, like this, I'm going to do the same. When I get over here, slip the stitches on a stitch holder, cast on 8 new stitches, and then continue around until I get back to this armhole, and that's going to be the new beginning of the round. And at this point, the pattern will tell you to put markers each side in the center of the 8 stitches we cast on. So there are different kind of markers. I'm just using these open ones that I can slip in here, right in between, so that, well, maybe that wasn't between the 4. We can do it perfectly like this. So now I have 4 on each side. And the reason for this is because they want us to do increases along the side to create an A shape of the sweater. So that's what we can see here on the side, that there are really nice looking increases, and I'm going to show you how to do them. So here I have my next piece, and it tells you to knit until you get to 1 stitch before the marker. So here I am, 1 stitch before the marker there, the one centered in the armhole stitches. We get here and we're going to do an increase called M1L in the pattern. That stands for make 1 left. And to do that left leaning increase, you go from the front under the yarn like that, pick it up, and then knit it through the back loop. And as you can see, that increase now is leaning to your left. Then you knit 1, slip your marker, knit another one, and now we want to do a right, and then we go from the back under the loop, go into the front, wiggle a little bit so we get through, knit that one, and then keep knitting to the other side where we have our second marker. Pattern's going to keep telling you to do that every, I think, 3 inches, depending on which size you're making. But as you can see here now, they get really invisible, not going to make a lot of fuss or anything, but give the sweater a nice A shape. So here you can see that piece, what that's going to look like, and we are at the side. And then we keep working around till we get down to here, and that's where next thing's happening, and that's the pockets. So if you don't want pockets, you can just keep knitting, but they are cute, nice decoration, and it has like some tricks to it, so I'm prepared to show you that. Next, we are pretending here we're coming from the top, okay? And we're ready to put the pouch stitches on a holder. So the pattern is going to tell you to knit up to the spot where they want you to make the pocket opening. And so I'm just going to knit 4 stitches here, and then let's say here now, here comes the pocket opening. So we take a holder and we'll just put the pattern is going to tell you to put 20 stitches on a holder. I'm just going to put a number of stitches here to show you kind of the technique that we want to do here. So here are the stitches that later on is going to be the pocket pouch. And now I'm going to cast on the same amount of stitches above this to keep working the body. And here again, we can do the twisted backward loops increase. We're just putting the same amount of loops onto the needle that we had put on the holder. And once you've done that, you're just gonna reach over and start knitting the remaining stitches. So that's pretty much how you get your pocket opening started. And later on, you're gonna have an opening like this. You're gonna work an edge, you're gonna work the pocket pouch, and then once that's done, you're gonna seam the pocket on the inside. You can also here see the cute little splits at the side. And once you're down here at the bottom, you're done. I hope you love this sweater as much as I do.
In today's Technique Corner, we're going to learn how to do knitted mitered squares. They're a great way to use up your scrap yarn if you have any laying around the house. To begin, you're going to cast on using a knit-on cast-on an odd number of stitches. So I've started casting on. I want to show you how to do a knit-on cast-on. You insert the tip of your right needle into the last stitch on the needle, knit up a stitch, but then do not remove the old stitch from the left needle. Instead, put the new stitch onto the left needle. That's one new stitch made. We need to do that so that we have an odd number of stitches. There's my last one, and I have marked the center stitch. To do a mitered square, the very first cast-on row counts as a right side row. So we're on a wrong side row now. We're going to slip the first stitch knitwise and then knit across until we get to that center marked stitch. That center marked stitch, instead of knitting it, we're going to purl it. It's going to give us a nice diagonal line in the center of our mitered square. I'll show you what I mean when I get there. Here I am. I'm going to purl. And then for the rest of the row, I'm just going to knit until I get to the very last stitch of the row. The very last stitch of this wrong side row in every row is going to be just a purl stitch. If we always slip the first stitch of every row knitwise and always purl the last stitch of every row, we'll get nice clean edges that we can use to pick up stitches later on our mitered squares. That's the key to neat mitered squares. So I'm purling this last stitch and I turn. I'm now on a right side row. Again, I'm going to slip the first stitch knitwise, knit across this time on a right side row until I get to one stitch before that center marked stitch. So I'm knitting across, until I'm one stitch before the middle stitch. Here I am, one stitch before. I'm going to decrease by doing an S2KP2, which means nothing to you until I show you how to do it. We're going to slip 2 stitches at once knitwise, knit the next stitch the regular way, and then pass those 2 slip stitches over and off. That gives us a central double decrease. It's going to be a beautiful diagonal line. We'll continue knitting across this row until we get to the very end of the row. The last stitch, again, as always, will be a purl stitch. I've worked up a little mitered square to almost the end so I can show you how to finish one of these off. So I have 5 stitches left here. Here's our diagonal line that is on the right side rows where we did that central double decrease, the S2KP2. I'm going to slip the first stitch of the row, do my central double decrease, pass the 2 slip stitches over, and then purl the last stitch of the row. For the wrong side row, I slip the first stitch knitwise, and then I'm going to purl the center stitch, purl the last stitch. For the very last row, it's going to be a right side row when there are 3 stitches left on the needle. All I have to do is an S2KP2. And the mitered square is done. I want to show you about how these can be constructed without any seams. This is the first square that you make. You cast on, Here and here, these are your cast on edges. There's your central double decrease. For this second square, this one here, I'm going to cast on an even number of stitches over here, pick up one stitch in the corner, pick up stitches the same number along the other side, and then I complete the square the same way that I did the one that I showed you. For this square, we pick up along this edge and cast on for this edge and decrease as we go. For the fourth square of this little set, we would pick up stitches here, one in the middle, and pick up stitches along here, and that would be 4 squares into one mitered square, and that's how we make knitted mitered squares.
The Port Orange Pullover is what's up next. It's a top-down sweater. There are so many advantages to working top-down for garments. The biggest advantage, and one you probably already know, is that you can try it on as you go. So you can tailor it to how your body is and the fit that you like. Let's get started though with the Bruges lace style neckline. Let me point it out to you on the mannequin. It's here on the sweater, and Bruges lace is just a method of making stitches, double crochets and chains, so you already know the stitches, in a narrow tape. And then that is our foundation for the sweater. So let's make that Bruges lace tape first to start. I have an H hook in this DK weight yarn, and this yarn is awesome because it is variegated, but yet the color doesn't pool and collect in awkward ways. It's more random than that. So let's chain 8 with our H hook, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're familiar at all with my designs, I do a lot of Bruges lace, and this is why. We will double crochet in the 6th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I like to use the back ridge, just a preference of mine. You can use your preference. And 2 more double crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 chains. And that is the whole row. That's it. 3 stitches plus that little chain loop on the side, and I'll lay it down and show you. And Bruges lace is one of my favorite things because it goes so fast. That was 1 row, and it took us about 5 seconds to do. Very quick. These short little rows are very addictive. We're going to chain 5, 3, 4, 5, and turn. We're not working into any of these chains. We're skipping them as if they're not even there, and instead working a double crochet in each of the 3 double crochets. So these short little rows get very addictive, and you get to the point where you don't want to stop. They just build on each other so quickly. Bruges lace is pretty amazing, and it's a neat way to start a sweater, I think, because it makes a delicate little neckline. And we all want delicate, don't we? So there's 2 rows. Let's just do 1 more, and then I'll show you what all 44 rows look like for this yoke. 44 is one of my favorite numbers. It's all nice and even. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how it's looking so far. Lay it down. We now have 1, 2, 3 rows of the Bruges lace with the chain 5 loops on either side. I'm going to, as instructed in the pattern, grab a stitch marker and indicate the first row of our tape, our Bruges lace tape, by marking it on the right side. And this is just how you would do it. Just pick a stitch and put the stitch marker on, and then you'll know that that's the right side of row 1. Once you've got all 44 rows as specified by the pattern, we will pull it out and lay it all down nice and neatly. This is the yoke that goes all the way around the sweater. Make sure it's flat and not twisted. And we'll take the beginning end of row 1 and the finished end of row 44, and we'll fasten off that edge. I'm going to hold this down with my hook, grab my scissors. All right, I'm going to leave maybe 5 inches, 6 inches or so. That's all the slack I want for this, because I'm now going to weave in this final row 44 to row 1 to make the tape. It's also quite stretchy, but if you want to try it on over your head to make sure it's going to fit, you absolutely can do that. So take the cut end, tail, and weave it through the hole where your hook was. Then I'm going to pick up the whole thing, make sure it's not twisted. I'm going to match up row 1 with row 44. Thread my tapestry needle. You can also just use a hook and pull it through, but I do like to use the tapestry needle. And I left myself not much room with hands here as I'm holding it carefully, but it's okay. It's all good. And we will match up those double crochets from row 1 with the double crochets of the final row. And just sew it together. Believe it or not, these 3 little stitches, that's the only sewing you have to do for this entire sweater. Because it's top down, there is no sewing. And it's worked in the round from the yoke down, so there's no side seaming either. So just match up those stitches. You're only sewing for 3 little stitches in the entire pattern. Then we'll have that yoke all nice and ready. We can trim those up and weave in those ends. We'll take 4 more stitch markers. So I didn't put a stitch marker there for row 1, so I'll go ahead and indicate that. Make sure so it looks more like yours when you're working from home. You'll have a stitch marker on row 1. Then I'm going to read my pattern carefully and place the stitch markers to mark the 4 corners of the yoke. So it tells us this is row 1, we're going to do the outer edge and mark loop number 6 and 8. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 6 and 8, I'll place stitch markers. These are important because when we start working down, those loops will get something different in the corners than the others. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Loop number 17, and loop number 19. Okay, so these 4 points are where we will do something different as we establish our pattern next. So you're all set. Once you have your foundation at your neckline, then it's all smooth sailing right down from there. Okay, let's look. All right, so we've started with the first row of our I guess you would call it the bodice. We're actually making the yoke down from the neckline here on the mannequin. We're going to add these stitches to the bruised tape so that we can create a foundation that will work the entire sweater, these same stitches throughout. So in the marked stitches, I'm going to pull back just an inch or 2 so that you can see where I'm at. We're going to join new yarn in the first loop. See, here's row 1. I make my stitch markers a different color. Let me tell you that a little bit about that first. Row 1, I make the stitch marker I use for row 1, I use a different color for the 4 points. So the one that's odd is the odd number 1. So that way you don't get confused between which one is a loop that we need to do something different and which one is row 1. I make it an odd color on purpose so that's my kind of visual trick to myself. We'll place 3 double crochets in the loop that belongs to row 1, and we'll begin working chain 2, 3 double crochets in the next loop. And we're skipping the side of the rows and just working in the loops. When we get to the first marked stitch, this is where it'll be a little bit different. So we've put 3 double crochets, chain 2, and in the first marked stitch, we're going to double crochet, 3 chains, it's a big V stitch is what it is, and another double crochet in the same stitch. Now we're going to move the stitch marker as work progresses. So you might see that phrase in the pattern, and when it says move the stitch marker as work progresses, that means go ahead and remove it from the spot where it was and put it in the new spot. So it's just growing with the sweater. That way you can see that next time it'll be a visual cue when you come to it that you'll do something special there. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets in the next chain 5 loop. And this really sets the pattern for the entire sweater. Every time you come to the stitch marker, you'll do, on this row, you'll do the V-stitch, and in other loops, you'll do the 3 double crochets. So the V-stitch in the marked stitch. And this lays the foundation. You won't do this row again, but it sets you up for the rest. And you do have all the skills necessary. So let me show you another row. Okay, the next round, you can see where this is growing now. We have the Bruges tape here in the center for the neckline. We've got the foundation row that I just showed you with the V stitches, and then the groups of 3 double crochet. And as our work progressed, we moved our stitch marker, and at the stitch marker, we're gonna do this. Single crochet, chain 3, single crochet in that chain loop in between the groups of double crochet. So every stitch will get a double crochet chain 1 when you're in between stitch markers. And that actually is the entire body of the sweater. All of this is double crochet chain 1, and you can make the length as long as you want. You can move this lace panel up if it flatters you to have it be a little bit higher. Try it on as you go. You can make the lace panel a little bit longer. The detail on the sleeve is the exact same stitch that you'll see here at the top, the double crochets, the groupings. So you do have all the skills necessary to make this gorgeous top-down Port Orange sweater.
All of the patterns and instructions for these projects and more are on our website. Be sure to join us next time as we create fanciful shawls, the perfect cover-up for any weather, on Knit and Crochet Now.
If you'd like to get more tips and tutorials, product reviews, and updates from the Knit and Crochet Now team, visit our website at knitandcrochetnow.com and sign up for our free monthly email newsletter. Today's show is number 807, Top-Down Sweaters. More stitching inspiration is available with a year's subscription to Creative Knitting, Crochet, or Crochet World magazines, which includes our Season 8 DVD set of Knit and Crochet Now. The cost is $34.99. To learn more, go to knitandcrochetnow.com. All 8 seasons, over 100 episodes of Knit and Crochet Now are available for you to access online on your computer, tablet, or mobile device. Purchased for $24.95 annually.
Brought to you by Annie's for those who are passionate about yarn and creative expression. With Annie's Craft Store showcasing patterns and supplies since 1975, and with magazines including Crochet, Creative Knitting, and Crochet World on your favorite newsstand or at anniescraftstore.com. Few things are more satisfying than learning a new creative skill, and one of the best places to get top quality instructions from some of the best teachers in the country is at anniesonlineclasses.com. We have classes in knitting, crochet, and lots of other crafts. Visit us today and watch a free preview. If you find a class you would like to take, we deliver it to you immediately. It will be yours to keep forever. With easy online access from any browser, you can watch, pause, watch again as many times as you want. You can also find lots of supplies and patterns for your newfound skills at anniescraftstore.com. Make sure to visit us online very soon.